Unit 14A follows safe work practices for direct client care. 14A1, Workplace Health and Safety in Australia. The national independent body for workplace health and safety is Safe Work Australia, and it's a partnership between governments, union and industry. The Safe Work Australia functions include developing and evaluating national policy and strategies, developing the model workplace health and safety laws that each state will follow, undertaking research, collecting, analysing and reporting data. Safe Work Australia is a national policymaker. It is not a regulator of workplace health and safety. Each state and territory has its own workplace health and safety bodies that are responsible for regulating and enforcing workplace health and safety laws in their area. So the national body, Safe Work Australia, it's a policymaker. Each state and territory have their own regulatory or enforcing organisations, and you can see them here. The state and territory regulators. I'd encourage you to go online and check out the regulator for your state or territory. There's important information on there that you should know. The role of the regulatory bodies includes educating and encouraging safe work practice, carrying out workplace inspections, investigating if a serious workplace injury or death has occurred, or even a near miss. So if a crane toppled over or something like that, they would also investigate that. Enforcing direction, improvement notices, prohibition notices and prosecution action. And these organisations have a lot of power. They can impose quite large fines and they can even jail employers. 14A.2, the different roles and duties from the model rules. PCBU, this is a person conducting a business or undertaking. Might seem a strange name, but this can be a sole trader, such as a plumber or a garden maintenance person, or it can be a very large company, such as BHP. And so that's a person conducting a business or undertaking. It can also be a government department. The duties of a PCBU are logical. So the duties around workplace health and safety requires that all PCBUs ensure, as far as reasonably practical, the health and safety of workers. Then you have an officer. So an officer is somebody who makes or participates in making significant decisions that affect the whole or most of the business, and has the capacity to significantly affect the business financial standings. An officer must exercise due diligence to acquire knowledge and keep up to date about workplace health and safety matters, to understand the business, including workplace health and safety hazards and risks, to ensure the right resources and processes are in place to eliminate or minimise workplace health and safety risks, and to provide the right or appropriate standard of care, to ensure that the business has the right processes for incidents, hazards and other workplace issues, to verify the processes and resources are being used. So this is logical in a way because a PCBU, the person conducting a business or undertaking, so this might be the CEO of BHP, they're not going to be able to get around to every single site to check on safety, so they rely on the officer. An officer in our particular context is probably the head of boarding, or it could be the school principal, while the PCBU is probably the chair of the school board or a person in that position. You also have health and safety committees, HSCs. These enable cooperation between a PCBU and workers to ensure health and safety at work, includes health and safety standards, rules and procedures for the workplace, and you usually find these in larger workplaces. Most workplaces will have a health and safety representative or a HSR, or maybe even multiple HSRs. So this is a worker who's been elected by the work group to represent them on health and safety issues, and it can be a combination of the employer and the work group identifying this person who's going to be the HSR. Members of the HSR are supposed to elect their own HSR. Workers. So what are workers? So it's anybody who carries out work for the PCBU, including employees, contractors, subcontractors, self-employed people, outworkers, apprentices or trainees, labour hire employees, and volunteers and workplace students as well. Labour hire volunteers might be a person who comes in to fill in for somebody in your organisation if somebody is sick or away for some reason. Then we come to the duty of workers, and there's just 3 duties. These are easy to remember, and they should make sense to us. So these are the 3 duties. Workers should take sensible health for theirs and others' health and safety at work. So you should make sure that your practice is common sense, and that you look after your own safety and that you do not injure other people in the workplace as well. So that's number 1, taking sensible care for your own and other people's health and safety at work. Number 2 is complying with instructions given by the PCBU. Number 3 is complying with policies or procedures of the PCBU. Contributing to workplace health and safety, all staff have a role and a responsibility. You can contribute to workplace health and safety in these ways: just being very vigilant for hazards, reporting hazards, housekeeping. Housekeeping is ensuring that your boarding residence is clean and free of things like tripping hazards, and that it's just neat and clean, and that contributes to workplace health and safety. Drills, so these could be emergency fire drills, lockdown drills, this sort of thing, and meetings. There's 2 main types of meetings: staff meetings and workplace health and safety meetings. So in staff meetings, workplace health and safety should be a standing agenda item in every board meeting, in every boarding meeting. So in the boarding meeting, your head of boarding will probably say, are there any workplace health and safety issues that we should be aware of? Has anybody identified any hazards? That sort of thing. So it's a standing agenda item. For workplace health and safety meetings, there's 3 types. One is a regular workplace health and safety meeting, and this is usually organised by the Health and Safety Committee, or the HSR, the Health and Safety Representative. So a meeting that you would have probably once a month or something like that. A second type of meeting is to review or amend a particular workplace health and safety policy or procedure. Another type of meeting is to respond to a hazard, a crisis event, or a potential crisis event. Our own practice in maintaining workplace health and safety currency, we should have regular training and education. We need to keep informed on regulatory changes. We need to network and collaborate and be involved in emergency response drills. And as I said, to check out your workplace health and safety website of your regulatory body in your state or territory. With your own practice, you need to reflect on your practice, and particularly to manage stress and fatigue. Just being aware of stress and fatigue, having self-care practices, make sure you've got workload management, have a good sleep and rest ratio, communicate and support if you're feeling stressed or fatigued, have time off and leave policies that are effective, and to have that, effective, workable work-life balance. Workplace emergency procedures. Workplace emergency procedures includes these 4 components: preparation and prevention before the emergency, immediate response to the emergency, communication during the emergency, and post-emergency action. So let's unpack that. Preparation and prevention. And it has these parts to it: risk assessment, to identify potential hazards, fire, medical emergencies, natural disasters, etc. Training, regular drills and training on emergency procedure. And this would include, of course, fire drills. Safety equipment, ensure fire extinguishers, first aid kits and emergency exits are accessible. And emergency contacts, display numbers for fire, police, medical assistance and internal safety officers. Number 2, the immediate response. Alert, so raise the alarm, whether it's a fire alarm, verbal warning, etc. Evacuate, so follow designated evacuation procedures. Containment, if safe to contain, so close doors to contain a fire or hazard. Assistance, help individuals with disabilities or injuries, so provide assistance where it is needed. Communication, emergency coordinator. There should be a person responsible for guiding the evacuation and liaising with the authorities. Reporting, call emergency services immediately. Accountability, conduct a head count at assembly or muster points as soon as possible. Post-emergency accident, so what we do after the emergency. So administer first aid as required, report and document as required, and then afterwards debrief, review the response to identify areas for improvement. 14A.3, identifying hazards, assessing and managing risk. Contributing to workplace health and safety, all staff have a responsibility and a role. You can't walk past a hazard anymore and just ignore it. We all have a responsibility to do something about it. What is a hazard? It's a situation at the workplace capable of causing harm. So we're talking about hazard in terms of workplace health and safety. It might include noisy machinery, chemicals, electricity, working at heights, repetitive job or bullying or violence, or it might even include something like fatigue. What is risk? This risk is the possibility that harm, so that death, injury or illness, might occur when exposed to a hazard. And risk is always measured in terms of likelihood and consequence. How likely is it and how bad will the consequence be? Hazard identification. Methods for identifying hazards in the workplace. Now, most hazards are identified by, number one, employees reporting. But then you might have regular hazard inspection. So some heads of boarding will take some staff members and they'll walk around a designated section of the boarding residence each month and have a look for hazards, try and identify any hazards in that particular area. Job safety checks are when you're having a job done, just making sure that there are no hazards on that job. So you might be having a person come in and build an extension onto the building. And so just ensuring that there's a job safety check carried out so that there are no hazards to young people with that building project. And safety audits are where you might get a person who comes in and does a full safety audit on your boarding residence. And so you might do that every year or every couple of years. So how do we manage risk? There are 4 parts to this. Identifying the hazards, finding out what could cause harm, assessing the risks, understanding the harm and how serious the harm could be and the likelihood of the harm actually occurring, controlling the risk, so implementing the most effective control measure that is reasonably practical, and then later reviewing the control measures to ensure that they're working as planned. Identifying hazards. Some hazards might be more obvious and others might be more difficult to identify. So you work closely with workers and look at every workplace to help identify potential hazards. Workplace incidents need to be investigated to identify any hazards involved and to control risk. Assessing the risk. A risk assessment can help determine the severity of the risk, whether any control members are effective, that's existing control members, what actions should be taken to control the risk, and how urgently these actions should be completed. A risk assessment should be done when there's uncertainty about how the hazard might result in injury or illness, where the activity involves a number of different hazards, so hazards that might kind of interact with each other to produce new or greater risks, or when there's changes of the workplace. Okay, so a risk assessment matrix. Once the hazard or potential hazard has been identified, you can use the risk assessment matrix. This is a very simple example of a risk assessment matrix. You can see the likelihood down one side, so almost certain, likely, possible or unlikely, and the consequence across the top, insignificant, minor, moderate, major or catastrophic. And then controlling the risk. So the most important thing we can do in controlling the risk is to eliminate the hazard if that's possible. And then if not, minimising the risk. The ways of controlling risk can be ranked from the highest level of protection and reliability to the lowest, and this is called the hierarchy of control. So we call this a hierarchy of control. The hierarchy of control always aim to eliminate the hazard. This is the most effective control. So you can see here the hierarchy of control. The first thing on the hierarchy of control is to eliminate the hazard. If it can't be eliminated, then minimise the risk by substituting with something that creates a lesser risk. Engineering controls, so isolating the hazard from a person, that's an example of an engineering control. Or administrative control, so change the way people work, and that could include instructions to staff and students that staff and students may not go into a particular area, those sort of administrative controls. And we also have PPE, so protecting the worker with PPE. There you can see the risk control measures. So at the top we've got eliminating the hazard. At the bottom we've got PPE. Reviewing the risk controls, so we then review the risk controls fairly regularly to make sure that they're still effective. Using the hierarchy of risk control to assess the situation. So can the hazard be completely removed? Can it be done without involving the hazard? Is there an alternative way of doing it? And for an example, have a look at this window cleaner. You can see this window cleaner. He's holding the sliding part of the window, which is a part that actually comes out, and he's cleaning the window. And you can see the same window cleaner up on this building. And you realise that any amount of PPE, nice boots, a nice helmet, etc., that sort of PPE is not going to save this person if they fall. And so we try to eliminate the hazard if that is possible. So one way of eliminating that hazard, of course, is not to clean the windows or substituting it with a less dangerous practice. But that's how we use the risk control measures, or the hierarchy of risk control. All right. When we react to the hazard, we must do something now to protect people from the hazard. So we identify the hazard, we assess it, and we manage it now. So we can't just go away and leave the hazard. So we eliminate it if possible. So if it's, say, a box that's in a hallway or something, and you can see that's a tripping hazard, you can remove that box. But if it's a electrical power point that's damaged, or it might be a hanging piece of iron or something that could strike a student, then you would isolate it, and that would mean blocking off the area. You might isolate it with tables and chairs or some way of just isolating it. You would notify staff and students to keep away from this area, and then you would record and report it so maintenance could come along and fix it. And so you need to identify your particular procedure for your boarding residents. You can have residual risk. So residual risk is any risk or danger that remains after a risk has been removed. And I think of a oval that we saw in Catherine, and it had bore pump covers, so a plastic bore pump cover out in the middle of the oval. And these covers degrade with the sunlight, so they degrade after a period of time. And this particular one was broken, and it was a serious risk. A student could have hurt themselves quite seriously if they'd run across that broken bore cover. Now, you manage that by replacing the cover. So you replace the cover with a new cover, but there is residual risk. And where there is residual risk, we try and manage it by a program of regularly replacing whatever it is, or regularly managing whatever is causing that residual risk. So have a program to replace that cover every 12 months. Common workplace hazards. And these are typical workplace hazards that we would find in boarding. So slips, trips and falls. And the most common way that you could slip or trip is where you have something on a floor surface. So it might be water or a plastic bag or shavings or something like that that causes a slip, trip or fall. Manual handling. What's a common workplace hazard for manual handling in boarding? It might be lifting the big eskies that you need to go out on a day excursion. It might be bringing in food. It might be moving furniture, but those sort of manual handling incidents. People handling. And the most common people handling incidents will be around first aid. So if a student's fallen over and you need to assist them or help them. But it could also be where you're intervening in an altercation between students or something like that. Electrical hazards. There's two types of electrical hazards. You can have electric shock and electric fires. And I think that it's often a problem where you have in boarding where you've got hair dryers and hair straighteners in a wet area. So they're the sort of electrical hazards. The electrical connection boxes, those boxes that you have that you plug in multiple leads, all those sort of things are electrical hazards. Plant operation. You might be thinking, well, plant, what kind of plant have we got in boarding? You have things like dishwashers, and dishwashers can be quite dangerous with the way the drawers come back down, the doors come down. You have dryers, washing machines, things like that. So they are possible workplace hazards for students. Biological hazards, and we have a whole new understanding of this, of course, after COVID, but a biological hazard could be anything from feces, urine, mucus, blood, vomit, anything like that. I think the most common biological hazard is sneeze droplets. If a student is sneezing or if there's an unwell student close by, that's a biological hazard. Chemical hazards include things like cleaning bleach, etc., cleaning chemicals, and also some chemicals these days have got acids in them, so they are chemical hazards. Workplace fatigue. Now, we shouldn't feel fatigued if we're on a normal roster, but it's things like having to get up in the night to look after a student who's ill or homesick or something. These things cause us workplace fatigue. So it's loss of sleep, unexpected loss of sleep. Workplace stress. And I think the most common cause of workplace stress in boarding is when students are exhibiting poor behaviours, and it can also be with relationship difficulties with other workers can cause workplace stress. Ergonomic hazards, and ergonomic hazard is when our body is put in an unnatural position, so it may be when you're working at a desk at the wrong height, or you're on a poor bed or something like that. And there are those sort of ergonomic hazards in boarding as well. Then we have student-related behavioural hazards, and these might include things like aggression or violence, self-harm or suicidal behaviour, substance abuse, bullying or harassment. So targeting peers through physical, verbal harassment, that sort of thing. So these are student-related behavioural hazards. Let's have a look at manual handling. Hazardous manual handling tasks include lifting, pushing, pulling, carrying, moving or holding something, restraining something, where it involves repetitive or sustained force, high or sudden force, sustained or awkward posture, or exposure to vibration, something like that. So how does that affect us? So let's have a look at the musculoskeletal system. This is made up of bones, muscles, joints, with cartilage, tendons, ligaments and connective tissue. The skeleton is a framework for the body. The adult human skeleton has 206 bones, male and female. There are 5 main shapes to the bones. Long bone, such as the upper arm, short bone, such as the hand, flat bone, such as the ribs, irregular bones, such as vertebrae, and sesamoid, such as the kneecap bones. Joints and cartilage. Joints are an area where 2 or more bones come together. Cartilage provides the cushioning inside joints or connects one bone to the other. The ligaments are tough bands of tissue that join the bones to other bones to strengthen joints. The knee joint has 4 ligaments that help stabilise it. The 2 collateral ligaments on the inner and the outer sides of the knee, and the 2 cruciate ligaments inside the knee joint. Muscles. There are around 600 muscles in the human body. They help the human body move, and they're also responsible for generating heat in the body, maintaining body temperature, and they also help regulate blood sugar levels. Skeletal muscle. Skeletal muscle, voluntary muscle or striated muscle, is muscle that you can consciously control. And how they work is that they run from one bone to another, usually passing at least one joint. Each muscle is comprised of muscle tissue, blood vessel, nerves and tendons. Skeletal muscles are usually attached to the bone by tendons. When your brain tells a muscle to contract, it shortens, pulling one bone towards the other across a joint, but muscles work in pairs, and where one muscle shortens, a corresponding muscle lengthens. When you contract your bicep on your upper arm, the tricep on the back of your upper arm lengthens. Tendons, these are made up of strong, fibrous connective tissue, and they connect muscles to bone, and they appear as the long, thin end of muscles. The Achilles tendon is the largest tendon in the body, and it joins the calf muscle to the heel bone. All right, so that's how our skeletal system works with the bones and muscles and tendons, etc. Some hazardous manual tasks can contribute to injuries such as muscle strains and sprains, ligament or tendon rupture, prolapsed intervertebral discs, tendinitis of the shoulder and elbows, carpal tunnel syndrome. So preventing injury from manual handling, we make sure that we lift correctly, correct lifting technique, avoid force that is hazardous, use alternatives to team lifting. So let's look firstly at correct lifting techniques. And you need to make sure the load is not too heavy. So it's a maximum of 25 kilograms for men and 16 kilograms for women. And that depends to the height at which you're lifting it, and it also depends on how far it is away from your body. So if you look at that little diagram there, you can see the weights that are safe to lift for men and women. These are generalizations, of course, because some men will be bigger and stronger, etc. But we must make sure that we try and stick to those maximums for men and women. So safe lifting. Firstly, we have a wide base of support. So we have our feet shoulder width apart, one foot slightly in front of the others. Squat down, bending at the hips and knees only, not our backs. If needed, put one knee to the floor and the other knee in front. Keep good posture. Look ahead, keep your back straight, chest out, shoulders back. Keep your upper back straight. Slowly lift by straightening your hips and knees, not your back. Keep your back straight and don't twist when lifting. Hold the load as close as you can to the body, at the mid-level of the body. Use feet to change direction, taking small steps. Lead with your hips to change direction. Keep your shoulders in line with your hips when moving, and set down the load carefully, squatting with your knees and hips only. If we were doing this in a class, we would actually practice this, but I'm sure you can practice this wherever you are. And some people, of course, are experienced in correct lifting, do it all the time. Use alternatives to team lifting. So redesign tasks, use mechanical aids. Team lifting can cause injury because workers are not usually matched in size and physical strength or experience. Workers do not exert force simultaneously, and you can have unexpected increases in load or a change in balance. So if you can, avoid team lifting. And then avoid force that is hazardous. Redesign tasks, use mechanical aid to avoid workers being involved in tasks where there's repetitive or is sustained force, high or sudden force, sustained or awkward posture, or where there's exposure to vibration. Okay, so that's all about looking after ourselves and preventing injury from manual handling. We've been looking at common workplace hazards, and one of these hazards is infection for both staff and students. Infections can be caused by pathogens, disease-causing microorganisms, and these are the most common sources of infection. bacteria, viruses, fungi, parasites, etc. They can enter the body through the respiratory tract, digestive system, skin or mucous membranes. The sources of infection can be contaminated water or food, airborne transmission, direct contact, hospital and healthcare settings, animal and insect bites, and contaminated objects. We can minimise infections, and we do this by hand hygiene, vaccinations, staying at home when sick, cleaning and disinfecting surfaces, respiratory hygiene, how you sneeze, that sort of thing, avoiding close contact, the social distancing, safe food handling, and just a healthy lifestyle, avoiding those things which are unhealthy. Some situations call for additional infection controls. So this could be the outbreak of infectious diseases such as COVID, handling bodily fluids or contaminated materials, caring for immunocompromised individuals, or dealing with skin infections or open wounds. Outbreak of infectious diseases. So the example, of course, is COVID-19, and we were all impacted by that, but it could also be influenza, gastroenteritis, or other contagious illnesses, which are very problematic in a boarding type environment where they can be spread throughout boarding very easily. So how do we deal with it? Isolation of affected individuals, increased cleaning and disinfection, use of personal protective equipment, and health monitoring of other students in the boarding residence. Handling bodily fluids or contaminated materials. Examples are blood, vomit, faeces, urine, or wound dressings. And how do we deal with this? Use gloves, masks, face shields, proper disposal of contaminated items, preferably in biohazard bags, and thorough cleaning of infected areas. And then caring for immunocompromised individuals. This is students with chronic illness or undergoing medical treatment, that sort of thing. So enhanced hand hygiene, limiting exposure to anybody who's unwell, and frequent cleaning of shared spaces. And then dealing with skin infections or open wounds, staphylococcal infections, I hope I've said that right, or scabies, that sort of thing. Covering wounds, avoiding sharing personal items like towels, and thorough disinfection of common areas. Another workplace hazard is fire, and certain groups are at higher risk, and this is children, young people, elderly people, and those with disabilities. Basic fire safety practice includes installing and maintaining smoke alarm, create and practice an escape plan, teach stop, drop and roll. So this is for somebody whose clothes are on fire. Just teaching young people what you do. You don't run, you stop, drop and roll. Use fire safe cooking practices. Be careful with heaters. Properly store inflammable material. Check electrical cords and power boxes. Practice candle safety. Fire extinguishers should be available, and keep matches and lighters secure. So they're 10 basic safety fire practices. Some behaviours contribute to fire injuries and even fatalities, and that's negligence with open flames, smoking indoors, the misuse of electrical devices, lack of fire safety awareness, unsafe cooking practices, improper use of heating devices, storage of flammable material, inadequate fire safety measures, and panic and poor evacuation. So not knowing how to properly evacuate a building. 14A, Part 5, Safety Signs and Dangerous Goods Signs. So these are the safety signs. Number 1, prohibition signs. You can't do this. So no entry, can't go into that area. 2, mandatory signs. You must do this. So you must wear boots, or you must wear earmuffs or helmet, etc. Number 3, danger signs. So these are things which will kill you. So do not enter this area. And you've probably also seen those 32,000 volt signs on buildings. So these are danger signs, that's dangerous electricity. Warning signs will hurt you, slippery when wet, needles, sharps, etc. Emergency information signs. The most common of these is a first aid sign that we would see for first aid equipment or a first aid box. Fire equipment signs, so signs for a fire blanket or a fire extinguisher or something similar. And then we have dangerous goods signs, and these are universal signs. So explosive gases, liquids, solids, infectious, corrosive, radioactive substances, etc. And the most common one of these signs would probably be the gas sign that you see where there's a gas cylinder or a gas tank, etc. The safety sign for poisons is a triangle with a skull and crossbones in the middle, and that's a sign for poisons. 14A Part 6, Personal Protective Equipment. The types of PPE include respiratory protection, so disposable masks, cartridge, that sort of thing, eye protection, spectacles, goggles, shields, visors, hearing protection, earmuffs or earplugs, hand protection, gloves, and that can even be things like creams, barrier creams, foot protection, shoes, boots, etc., head protection, helmets, caps, hoods, hats, protection from falls, so a harness or a fall arrest device. One stops you from falling and the other saves you if you do fall. Skin protection, hats, sunburn cream, long sleeve clothes, etc. Responsibilities for the use of PPE, so management must ensure that correct PPE is provided, training is provided, proper selection, fit, use, cleaning and maintenance of PPE, supervision and enforcement of PPE policy is undertaken, evaluation of the effectiveness of PPE is carried out on a regular basis, and all equipment complies with current relevant Australian standards. So they're the responsibilities for management. And employees also have responsibilities. 3, they must use PPE correctly, they must not misuse or damage PPE, and they must report damage, malfunction, or the need to clean PPE. So that's the end of 14A. Thank you very much, and I'd just ask you to submit your assessments as soon as you can. There's assessment 14A2, which is a practical assessment still to do. Thank you.